You know, this movie's really got me thinking. It's been a while since I've thrown around the old frisbee. Welcome back to the channel, guys. Today our movie in the middle is 28 Years Later.
There's no discharge in the war.
28 Years Later is the long-awaited follow-up to 28 Days and Weeks, focusing on a quarantine island in Europe that has developed an entirely new way of living in the midst of the deadly disease known as the infected. It stars Jodie Comer, Aaron Taylor-Johnson, Alfie Williams, and Ralph Fiennes. You know, I really do love the zombie genre, and yet I don't own a single zombie movie. It's weird. But you know what I do own, apparently? Is How to Train Your Dragon. Did the whole video on it. Didn't even realize I owned the movie. You know what, we're going to redo it right now. So 28 Years Later just came out, and it feels like we've waited 28 years for it, although I guess I can't really say that. I was never there for the original. I only watched it maybe like 2 or 3 years ago. But 28 Days Later is a great movie, and it is because it is so gritty and quiet and indie. It had sort of a lower budget, they were doing it kind of guerrilla style, and that really works to its effect for just how crazy and how creepy these zombies are. Or, I'm sorry, the diseased, the infected. Be serious. And I think the thing you could take away from 28 Days Later as being very unique and fresh for the zombie genre was that these zombies are fast. You know, they're not the slow-moving, gonna catch up with you, hoarding kind of thing. They're just bolting at you, and you're gonna die if you don't get away fast enough. And that is definitely way more terrifying. And 28 Weeks was a great follow-up. It's definitely a little bit more Hollywood, more action-oriented, kind of your, aliens to Alien. This is, 28 Weeks is more action to 28 Days, but both are very, very well done. And I was very excited to see what this one was going to do, especially considering how the trailer was. I swear, every time I went to the theater and saw a new trailer for this, I didn't even know what it was going to be for every time the trailer started, because it felt like there were 3 different kinds. And the thing I think that really sticks out about, especially I think it's the first trailer, is that haunting poem by Rudyard Kipling. It's called Boots, I think, and I didn't even know what it was at first. I didn't know if it was a poem or somebody reading aloud something on a radio. I really wasn't sure. It was creepy. That is absolutely one of the best trailers I've seen in a while, and I was glad to hear that that poem was used in the movie. It just gives a super haunting feeling.
4/11/1732, the day before. Boots, boots. Try to think of something different. Oh, my God, keep me from going lunatic. There's no discharge in the war.
So starting off with the highs, this movie kept purely the cinematography of the first one, and even the second one, but especially of the first. They kept that gritty look, that very jerky, erratic filming and editing, the very high frame rate, everything that makes these zombies feel even more terrifying than they already look, just because you feel like you are not going to get away fast enough. And I very much appreciated that they did that, and I actually now know and can understand why they had this weird setup with all the iPhones, because that was a big thing. This movie was shot partially, if not completely, on iPhones, which is just insane, first of all, that we're at that point. They had this contraption, and I was like, why do you need so many? Just film it with one. Now I understand, and I'm not going to tell you what it is, but all I'm going to say is it's a type of shot I don't think I've ever seen in a movie. And also, I really loved the color grading of the movie. Everything is just very vibrant, and it pops, which is weird to say considering this is a zombie movie, so they always seem kind of drab and dreary and very washed out. But they do, in spots, still keep that very desaturated look as well. And going along with the technical elements, the production design, obviously, the makeup is insane, and the practical effects, all of that. I mean, you put work into those things, you're gonna have a much better movie, and it's gonna be much better received because you at least tried. And it makes it look just that much more real and tangible. I also really liked seeing the way that they were living, the society they built, because the thing that's different about this one from the other two is that the other two are very in-the-moment events. It happened and we're off. This is like they've had almost 3 decades of this going on, and so they've built around it. It actually kind of reminded me of The Walking Dead, you know, especially like seasons 7, 8, when they get to like Hilltop and all that. You got the big gates and everything. But there was just this very cool element where you have where they are now and where they used to be, the old land. They call it the mainland, and it's just rows upon rows of houses. So it's funny because you have the very thriving village, which is basically in the woods and built houses there, and then you have what looks like the city, but it's completely desolate. It's just very cool, and it's connected by a body of water and just this one path, and that leads to one of the coolest and scariest and most suspenseful scenes of the movie. And speaking of scary, once again, these infected zombies, whatever you want to call them, are just terrifying. I'm not usually scared of zombies. I mean, really, who is? But these are just chilling. The way that they run, the fact that they're probably stark naked, there's just not a thought. They're gonna go eat you. That is it. There is one scene in particular, they're on a hill, and they start to gather, and then they start to run, and that was just terrifying. And I love the story in this movie and the characters. I love how they set up this family, and you kind of don't know what their dynamic is. You're sort of learning it as you go. It's not really spelled out at first. And you kind of think maybe it's one thing, and then there's another, and you kind of get to spend a lot of time with the two parents of this one kid, who really is kind of the main character. It's this kid, and he takes it upon himself to basically try to, I'm not going to say how, but in a way sort of heal his family during all of this crisis. And you get to see how all of their relationships are in very subtle, very effective ways. A lot of these kid actors nowadays are really killing it, just because more often than not, when you see a kid actor, especially is going to be the main character in a movie, you're like, okay. But that always leads to some really great moments, because especially if the kid is portrayed as very mature, or, you know, in the process of really growing up and like all this loss of innocence, and the actor is really good, you're going to get a really good character out of that. And I loved Spike in this. That's his name, Spike, so it's pretty cool. Only other time I've ever heard a character be named Spike was from Buffy the Vampire Slayer, so that kind of fits.
Out for a walk, bitch.
But this one was great because, as they all have, but especially in this one, it really puts the characters and the emotion at the forefront. You know, it's very much about story and what the characters are going to do and what they decide. And I just thought that they did a great job in handling certain moments. A lot of the moments in this movie are very beautiful and very emotional, just as they are scary. It's especially one moment towards the middle of the movie that really got me thinking about different things that can happen and possibilities that can happen with these basically zombies. It really gets you thinking. It's something I did not ever think about happening that would even occur in these movies, or really any zombie movies for that matter. Lastly, if you had told me that there was one or two scenes in this movie in which the audience would be cracking up like it was an MCU movie, I would have said, no way. But I swear to God, there is a scene in here that is so funny. I mean, it's funny in a little parts throughout, but there's 1 to 2 moments, you know, maybe for about 15 minutes in this movie, that are just genuinely so funny, and the audience was laughing their ass off. I do have 2 middles, the first of which is that there is a new aspect to the zombies here, specifically a new type of zombie, I'm not going to say what it is, that comes up, and it was very cool, made for some insane sequences. The only thing I don't know is how this can be possible. I didn't think that there were different types. You know, I thought they were just all infected by this disease. I didn't think it would, like, make them different. There is just something about them, and I'm like, but how? And I hope that's explained in the next one. My other middle is a lot bigger, and this is really the only thing from the movie where I went away being like, I'm not quite sure how I feel about that, is this movie very much relies on the fact that there's going to be another. And that's fine. You know, like we've had Dune. I was thinking about Dune and how that one just kind of stops at a certain point because it's adapting from a book. So it's not like one complete story, you know, it just stops after 2 hours, 45 minutes. This one's sort of the same way. It just wouldn't be as much of a problem if the structure of the movie didn't feel like it was completely like 2 separate halves. There is something that I like about that, because we kind of get to see in full different characters at different times. We get to spend time with one character on one side and then one character on the other half of the movie. But it also just feels very split. And I thought at least we would go back to the other characters, especially in the second half, that we would go back to somebody once or twice just throughout just to check in on them, but we didn't. And again, I do like how isolated that makes it feel. Like, once you go to one section or the other, you're there. You don't know what's going on in the mainland, you don't know what's going on in the village, you are completely separate from everybody. And that was a great tone. I just, story-wise, character-wise, it felt very like, where'd they go? Now, I do wonder if any of the negative reviews, I've seen some of the reviews for this that just weren't that positive, and I almost have to wonder the way that they were wording them, if people know that this is going to be a trilogy, because it wasn't really, completely promoted that way, and if you didn't know, I wouldn't be surprised if you didn't, find out. I can see how that would make you kind of mad, how the movie ends. It's not abrupt, but it's like, where did that come from? And I will say that there was something that me and a friend of mine, we thought was going to happen. That we thought something was about to happen at the end that we were super excited for. Turns out that was not it, but still hoping that that can come around in the next one. So overall, 28 Years Later is absolutely one of the best movies I've seen this year. It is beautiful, it is haunting, it is terrifying. The filming's incredible. They just did everything right in this one and made it so much deeper than it really needed to be. I mean, it was just great that they are keeping focus on characters and story and relationships. That was awesome. For some people, it might be a little too slow. It might be like, I wanted more with the zombies, but don't worry, we're going to be getting 2 others. And I think this one really needed to establish the family unit and the characters. And I'm very excited to see more of the world after this. I really hope they expand to see, what's the rest of the world like right now? How many of the islands right now are quarantined? Because we're so separated from everybody, I want to know what's going on. And I really hope we get to see that in the next 2. I'm going to give 28 Years Later a 3.5 out of 4. Well, guys, let me know what you thought of 28 Years Later. Where does it rank in compared to the other 2? And as always, keep your hopes high, your stress low, and movies right in the middle. I'll see you guys later.